First and foremost, your reaction to the infrastructure bank announcement.
I'm very disappointed. Obviously, I'm very disappointed, and frankly surprised. I'm told that there was a private firm that was hired to look at the various cities that were bidding and make a determination. But I don't know anybody in Calgary who this firm actually contacted. So if the government was interested in an evidence-based decision, how can they get enough evidence without actually talking to people in Calgary? They certainly didn't talk to Calgary Economic Development. They certainly didn't talk to the city of Calgary. I think this is a bad decision. I think it's going to mean the infrastructure bank's overhead is going to be much more expensive being in Toronto. And I think it's going to be difficult for the infrastructure bank to be creative and innovative when it's surrounded by traditional Bay Street thinking. You know, I saw that former Minister Emerson said, you know, if you live in North Dakota, you don't expect to have banks there, you have to go to New York. As a matter of fact, that's not true at all. In the United States, the banking industry is much more diverse. 6 of the 10 largest banks in the US are not headquartered in New York City. Number 10 is headquartered in Toronto, by the way. But the most interesting one probably is what was once the largest bank in the US, the Bank of America, which grew from a small bank in Charlotte, North Carolina. And Charlotte has become a very important center for finance precisely because people didn't think that that innovation could happen in New York City. And that's really what we're looking at here. It wasn't to eat Toronto's lunch. It was to build on an important secondary financial center here in Calgary and give the federal government the chance to show some confidence in it. It's a shame they didn't take that opportunity.
What kind of follow-up, if any, will you be expecting out of Ottawa on this?
I was also a bit surprised not to receive a direct call from the ministers involved letting me know about their decision. When we do talk, I will point out to them that I would like to see that report that scored the various places. I'd like to know how much they spent on it, and I'd like to know why no one actually contacted anyone in Calgary for that.
What would the benefit be of having this here? I mean, if you have it here, do you get projects or what?
It's truly more symbolic than real in terms of a real shot from the federal government, a shot in the arm saying, look, the financial services sector in Calgary matters, and it makes sense to invest in financial services here, as every one of the largest banks in the world has already determined, because almost all of them have locations here. The other thing that's important, though, is that everyone in the world is watching the Canada Infrastructure Bank. It can't just be traditional P3s. That's not going to get us where we need to go. It needs to have very creative, interesting new ways of engaging private capital and building infrastructure. And Calgary's financial services sector, precisely because it's not tied to Toronto or New York that closely, has a huge history of being innovative in creating new financing structures. And it's a real shame that the Canada Infrastructure Bank will be losing out on that. It means that it has actually a far less possibility now of being successful and creating new innovative structures that people around the world can use to build badly needed infrastructure.
What do you make of the proposal from one of your colleagues to restrict social media?
What do I make of it?
Yeah, what do you think?
Well, you know, anything that helps committee and council meetings work better is a good thing. Because as you'll see, even today, we had situations where members of council asked questions that were just asked. You know, last week, Councillor Chabot started an interminable line of questioning in committee, 40 minutes worth, I think, by saying, I apologize if these questions have been asked before, implying that he wasn't listening. And that is a huge waste of everybody's time. I think everyone has to be respectful. You know, as chair, it's really important for me to listen carefully, to have read every page of the agenda before we go in, every letter, to make sure I know people's names, make sure I'm listening to what they're asked, what they're talking about, making sure they're addressing questions, making sure they're on time and on topic. But I will tell you that I've often looked up and seen all 14 of my colleagues not paying any attention. And that's not about social media. That's about signing Christmas cards. It's about doing paperwork. Sometimes it's about flipping forward in the agenda. Sometimes it's about going on Google Earth and looking for that particular property to see some satellite pictures of it. But it really is ultimately about respect. And I even remember that when I was a member of the public who often spoke in public hearings, that was before there was social media, we'd have many members of council at that time not paying any attention. So it really is up to council. It's not about spending a bunch of money and making IT and administration do a bunch of work in order to build basic respect. Council members should just have that. Now, all that said, council's got a lot to deal with. And if I were a politician, say, who was interested in running for mayor, I'd probably be spending my time trying to do good things for my ward, good things for the city so I could run on my record, instead of wasting council's time with this sort of thing.
Do you think it was a personal attack on you?
You can ask him that. He's very clearly said it was a personal attack on me. And that is a waste of council's time as far as I'm concerned. If that's the campaign he wants to run, let him run it. I'm focused on what's going on in the city.
How do you feel about you being the target of this when clearly everyone else is doing it too?
Oh, you know, everybody wants to stick a fork in me. I'm tempting to stick a fork in. I don't mind because they're usually plastic forks that don't go in.
Do we really need a policy in place to ban social?
No. I mean, I won't really care if council does it if they think that's that important to them. But really what we need is councillors to have good discipline, all of us.
On the secondary street front, there was research from two councillors' offices last week. 83% of the time it's approved. We're sitting hearing you guys go through all this today. I guess were you surprised by the research that they had done?
No. No, I mean, what the research, I haven't read the report yet, but reading the excellent media reports of the report, it seems to me that the report's conclusion is there's no rhyme or reason for what gets approved. And I've said that for many, many years, and that's actually very frustrating to me. Imagine you're that person in Dalhousie today, the one that was actually rejected, where there was no debate on it, where no one actually talked about why they were voting against it. The applicant wasn't here because we tell them you don't really have to come, and now they're going to get the news that it was rejected and no one knows why. I don't even know why. I didn't understand what council's reasoning was. I heard a couple members of council say something about parking, but not understanding the actual parking on that lot. And certainly the one we just passed had a much worse parking situation than the one in Dalhousie. So I'd be very frustrated. And fundamentally, council has to fix this. We can't be arbitrary and we can't be capricious on this. It's people's livelihoods, it's people's property, it's people's community, and we gotta do better.
Do you have any confidence this council will fix it before
No,
the election?
no, I don't. I'm always open to ideas. I always vote for the compromises. In fact, I'm the swing vote on the compromises. But I don't think that I haven't seen any will in this council to fix it. And certainly after 7 years, I think it's going to require some fresh thinking.
Just a question on behalf of a colleague. There was the shooting on Center Street, Bridge, Center Street yesterday. The police say are random. It was random. Does that concern you or alarm you?
Yeah, I haven't yet had a briefing from the police chief on this. It is very, 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 very uncommon for us to have random acts of violence in Calgary, particularly random shootings. This is in fact the first I've heard one of in a very long time. And if that is the case, it is deeply concerning, but I know the Women and Men of the Police Service will find those perpetrators.
Your reaction to what happened at the Genesis Center this morning at Calgary is getting involved with that rally?
This is an interesting thing about a real lack of proper information going out to the community. The area in question has always been slated for housing. It was part of the deal to have a school, rec center, and housing all on the same site opposite the LRT station. It is certainly not a park. It is a fenced-off, weedy area that was always slated for construction. And I believe that many people in the community, from reading letters, don't even realize that's the piece of land we're talking about. And so it's a shame when, again, folks who are interested in running for office spread misinformation about this sort of thing. This is a particularly dumb idea because it is asking people to vote on a policy that council does not have. It says to vote on whether we should automatically take it. As a matter of fact, the council in 2013 decided not to automatically take it and to have a debate about it every time. So to have a plebiscite question on something that doesn't exist, it's like having a plebiscite question on whether the city of Calgary should hunt down every hippopotamus found within city limits. There's very rarely wild hippopotami in city limits. And so this really doesn't make any sense. And again, if you're going to try to launch your campaign and you're going to try and get yourself in the newspaper, don't waste council's time on stuff that doesn't even exist.